The notification sound on my phone cut through the noise of the construction site like a knife. I was 300 miles from home, knee-deep in rewiring an old warehouse in Cleveland, when my wife Sarah's message lit up my screen. "Hey babe, hope work's going well. Listen, something came up. Derek invited me to dinner at his parents' house tonight. I know it sounds weird, but his mom specifically asked for me. She said she missed me and wanted to catch up. Just don't get jealous, okay? It's just a friendly dinner, nothing serious. Love you." I stared at the message for a long moment, my work gloves still covered in dust and electrical tape residue. Derek, her ex-boyfriend from high school, the guy she dated for 3 years before we met, the one whose parents always treated her like their own daughter. The same Derek who'd been conveniently showing up in our lives more and more over the past few months. "Everything all right, Jake?" my partner Tony called from across the room where he was installing junction boxes. "Yeah, just Sarah," I replied, shoving the phone back in my pocket. But everything wasn't all right. Something about that message felt wrong. The way she explained too much, justified too quickly. In 12 years of marriage, Sarah had never been the type to over-explain innocent situations. I tried to focus on the work, but my mind kept wandering back to that text. Derek's parents, the people who used to joke about Sarah being their future daughter-in-law back when she was 17, the same people who'd made pointed comments at our wedding about how they always hoped she'd end up with someone from a better family. By 6 p.m., I couldn't take it anymore. The dinner would be starting soon, and despite my better judgment, I found myself dialing Sarah's number. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Hey, honey, how's Cleveland treating you?" "Fine, just wanted to check in. How's the dinner going?" "Oh, it's lovely. Mrs. Patterson made her famous pot roast, and we're just catching up on old times. You know how it is?" I could hear voices in the background, laughter, the clinking of silverware. It sounded warm and familial, exactly like she'd described. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe this really was just an innocent dinner between old friends. "That's great, babe. Tell them I said hello." "I will. Love you, Jake. Get some rest tonight, okay?" "Love you too." I was about to hang up when I heard it. A voice in the background, clear as day despite the distance. Mrs. Patterson's distinctive laugh, followed by words that made my blood run cold. "Oh, we're just so happy our daughter-in-law finally left that boyfriend of hers and came back to our Derek. They belong together, always have. Now they can be a real family again." The phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the concrete floor of the warehouse. Tony looked up from his work, concern written across his weathered face. "But, Jake? What happened?" I picked up the phone with shaking hands. The call was still connected, but Sarah had moved away from the conversation. She was saying something about dessert, her voice distant and muffled. Daughter-in-law, not Sarah or Derek's friend or even Derek's ex-girlfriend. Daughter-in-law, present tense. As if I didn't exist. As if our marriage was just some inconvenient obstacle that had finally been removed. "I have to go home," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What?" "Jake, we've got 2 more days on this job. The client's expecting—" "I have to go home now." Tony had worked with me long enough to recognize the tone in my voice. He nodded slowly, already reaching for his tools. "All right, let's pack up." The drive back to our small town in Ohio was the longest 4 hours of my life. Every mile that passed brought new questions, new realizations, new pieces of a puzzle I'd been too blind to see. The late nights Sarah had been spending out with girlfriends, the new clothes she'd been buying, the way she'd started wearing makeup again after years of casual comfort, the phone calls she'd take in the other room, the way she'd started talking about finding herself and exploring new opportunities. It was past midnight when I pulled into our driveway. Sarah's car wasn't there, which didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was seeing Derek's silver BMW parked 2 blocks away on Maple Street, hidden behind the old church where no one would think to look for it. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, engine off, staring at our house. The house we'd bought together 8 years ago, the one we'd painted room by room, the place where we'd planned to grow old together. Every window was dark, except for the porch light Sarah always left on when she was out late. My phone buzzed, another text from Sarah. "Dinner ran really late, staying at my sister's tonight rather than drive home tired. See you when you get back Thursday. Miss you." Her sister lived in Columbus, an hour and a half away, but Derek's car was 2 blocks from our house. I drove slowly down Maple Street, my headlights off, until I reached the BMW. It was definitely Derek's. Same license plate, same pretentious vanity frame that read, "Patterson Real Estate, your dreams, our expertise." The car was empty, but the engine was still warm. Following a hunch that made my stomach churn, I drove to Derek's house on the other side of town. It was a place I'd been to exactly twice, once for a housewarming party 3 years ago, and once to pick up Sarah after her car broke down at a book club meeting that I now realize probably never existed. The house was lit up like Christmas morning. Through the large front windows, I could see people moving around in the living room, and there, clear as day, was Sarah. She was wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she said was too fancy for anywhere we'd go. She was laughing at something Derek was saying, her hand resting on his arm in a gesture that was far too intimate for a casual dinner between old friends. Mrs. Patterson appeared in the window, carrying a tray of what looked like coffee cups. She set it down and then did something that made my heart stop. She hugged Sarah. Not a polite, friendly hug, but the kind of embrace reserved for family members. The kind of hug a mother gives her daughter. Derek's father appeared next, patting Derek on the back with obvious pride. The four of them stood there in that warm, golden light, looking for all the world like a family celebrating a reunion. A family that didn't include me. I sat in my truck across the street, watching my wife play house with the people who'd never thought I was good enough for her. Watching her smile and laugh and act like the happiest woman in the world. Watching her be everything with Derek that she hadn't been with me in months. My phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. Hello? Jake, I thought you might call. How was your day? Fine. How's your sister's place? There was a pause, barely perceptible, but I caught it. Oh, you know Lisa. She's got the guest room set up like a hotel. Very comfortable. Through the window, I watched Sarah pace around Derek's living room, phone pressed to her ear, while Derek and his parents watched her with amused expressions. That's good. Well, I should let you get some rest. Okay, honey. Love you. Love you too. I hung up and continued watching. Sarah said something to the group that made them all laugh. Derek pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. Mrs. Patterson clapped her hands together like she was watching her favorite romantic movie. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to drive home and pretend I hadn't seen this. I wasn't going to wait until Thursday and act like everything was normal. I was going to walk into that house and end this charade once and for all. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I sat in my truck for another 20 minutes, watching and planning. The smart thing would have been to drive home, pack my things, and call a lawyer in the morning. The smart thing would have been to handle this like a civilized adult, but there was nothing civilized about what I'd just witnessed. Nothing adult about the way my wife was lying to my face while playing happy family with her ex-boyfriend. Nothing reasonable about the way his parents were already calling her their daughter-in-law while I was still legally her husband. I got out of the truck and walked across the street. The front door was solid oak with a decorative glass panel that gave me a perfect view of the scene inside. Sarah was now sitting on the couch next to Derek, looking through what appeared to be photo albums. Mrs. Patterson was pointing at pictures and talking animatedly, while Mr. Patterson poured brandy from an expensive-looking bottle. It was cozy, intimate, exactly the kind of evening I'd imagined having with Sarah and my own parents, if they'd lived long enough to see us married. I rang the doorbell. The conversation inside stopped immediately. I watched Derek get up from the couch, confusion written across his face. He wasn't expecting visitors at 12:47 a.m. on a Tuesday night. Through the glass, I saw him approach the door cautiously. "Who is it?" he called out. "Jake Morrison, Sarah's husband." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Sarah's face go white as she shot up from the couch. Mrs. Patterson's hand flew to her chest in shock. Mr. Patterson set down his brandy glass so hard I heard it clink from outside. Derek looked back at Sarah with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fear? Guilt? Annoyance at being caught? Maybe all three. "Jake?" Sarah's voice was barely audible through the door. "What are you doing here? I thought you were in Cleveland until Thursday." "Change of plans," I said loudly enough for everyone inside to hear. "Are you going to let me in, or are we going to have this conversation through the door?" Derek slowly unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. He was wearing khakis and a button-down shirt that probably cost more than I made in a week. His hair was perfectly styled, his face clean-shaven and smug. Everything about him screamed privilege and entitlement. "Jake," he said with fake concern, "is everything all right? Sarah said you were working out of town." "Everything's fine, Derek. Thanks for asking." I stepped past him into the foyer, tracking mud from the construction site onto their pristine hardwood floors. I just wanted to see how the family dinner was going. Sarah appeared in the doorway to the living room, still wearing that blue dress, still looking like she'd been caught with her hand in the cookie jar. "Jake, I can explain." "Explain what? That you're at your sister's house in Columbus?" Because that's what you told me 20 minutes ago when I called. Mrs. Patterson emerged from behind Sarah, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Now see here, young man. There's no need to barge into our home making accusations. Accusations? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm not making accusations, Mrs. Patterson. I'm making observations. Like the observation that my wife told me she was having dinner with you folks tonight, then told me she was staying at her sister's house, but somehow ended up here at midnight looking very comfortable on your son's couch. Jake, please, Sarah said, stepping toward me. You're misunderstanding the situation. Am I? Then help me understand. Help me understand why Derek's parents think you're their daughter-in-law. Help me understand why you're wearing the dress I bought you for our anniversary to have dinner with your ex-boyfriend. Help me understand why you lied to me about where you were spending the night. The room went dead silent. Derek's face had gone from smug to worried. His parents exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Sarah looked like she was about to cry. You heard that? She whispered. Every word. Finally, our daughter-in-law left that boyfriend of hers and came back to our Derek. Ring any bells? Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. Now, Jake, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding here is mine, I said, cutting him off. I misunderstood what kind of woman I married. I misunderstood what kind of man Derek is, and I misunderstood what kind of people you are. I turned to face Sarah directly. How long? Jake, it's not what you think. How long? She looked down at her hands, tears starting to fall. 3 months. 3 months. A quarter of a year. While I'd been working overtime to pay for the vacation to Hawaii she'd been planning a future with someone else. While I'd been talking about starting a family, she'd been rebuilding her relationship with the family that had never accepted me. 3 months, I repeated. And you never thought to mention it? You never thought to tell me you wanted out of our marriage before you started shopping for a replacement? It wasn't supposed to happen, she said, her voice breaking. We just ran into each other at the grocery store, and we started talking, and... And what? You accidentally fell back in love? You accidentally started lying to me? You accidentally let his parents think you'd left me? Derek finally found his voice. Jake, man, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. We were going to tell you... I turned on him so fast he took a step backward. Were you? When? After you'd moved her into your house? After you'd gotten married? After you'd had a couple of kids, and I was just some guy she used to know? That's not fair, Mrs. Patterson interjected. Sarah has been unhappy for years. Anyone with eyes could see that. Derek is offering her the life she deserves, the life she should have had if she hadn't settled. Settled? The word came out like a growl. She settled? Mom, please, Derek said quickly, but the damage was done. Yes, settled, Mrs. Patterson continued, her voice getting stronger. Sarah is a beautiful, intelligent woman who could have had anyone. She could have married into a good family, had a comfortable life, been somebody important. Instead, she married a what? Say it. Mrs. Patterson's mouth snapped shut, but her eyes said everything. A blue-collar nobody. A man without prospects or connections or the right last name. A man who worked with his hands and came home dirty and would never be good enough for their precious social circle. You know what? I said, looking around the room at all of them. You're right. She did settle. She settled for a man who loved her enough to work 60-hour weeks so she could stay home and find herself. She settled for a man who never looked at another woman in 12 years of marriage. She settled for a man who would have done anything to make her happy. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my wallet, extracting the small piece of paper I'd been carrying around for 2 weeks. The receipt from the jewelry store where I'd put a deposit on the diamond earrings Sarah had been admiring. The ones I'd planned to give her for our anniversary next month. She settled for a man who was stupid enough to think their marriage was worth fighting for. I tore up the receipt and let the pieces fall to their expensive Persian rug. But you're right about one thing, Mrs. Patterson. She deserves better. She deserves a man who won't waste 12 years of his life loving someone who was just biding her time until something better came along. I looked at Sarah one last time. She was crying openly now, mascara running down her cheeks. But she didn't say anything, didn't deny it, didn't fight for us, didn't even try to explain. I'll have divorce papers drawn up tomorrow, I said. You can have your lawyers contact mine. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Sarah? Next time you want to leave your husband, try having the decency to tell him first. It's called respect. Look it up. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear Sarah sobbing and Mrs. Patterson trying to comfort her. I could hear Derek saying something about handling this better, and Mr. Patterson muttering about dramatic scenes. But I didn't care anymore. I was done caring. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The house felt different when I walked in. Bigger somehow, emptier, like it already knew what was coming. I went straight to the bedroom and started packing a bag. I couldn't stay here tonight. Couldn't sleep in the bed I'd shared with Sarah for 8 years, knowing she'd been planning her escape for months. My phone started ringing at 1:30 a.m. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again 5 minutes later. Then again. By 2 a.m., I had 7 missed calls and 3 voicemails I didn't bother listening to. I was throwing clothes into a duffel bag when I heard her car in the driveway. The front door opened and closed, and her footsteps echoed through the house as she called my name. Jake, Jake, we need to talk. I kept packing. She found me in the bedroom, still wearing that blue dress, her makeup smeared from crying. Where are you going? Motel, I said without looking at her. I'll find an apartment this weekend. You don't have to leave. This is your house too. I stopped packing and stared at her. My house? The house you've been planning to abandon for 3 months? The house you were going to leave when you moved in with Derek? That house? I never said I was moving in with Derek. You didn't have to say it. His parents already have you moved in. They're already planning the wedding. They're already talking about grandchildren. I zipped up the bag and slung it over my shoulder. I'm not going to sit here and wait for you to work up the courage to ask for a divorce. Jake, please. Can we just talk about this like adults? Adults? I laughed bitterly. Adults don't sneak around behind their spouse's back for 3 months. Adults don't lie about where they're spending the night. Adults don't let their lovers' parents trash talk their husband while they sit there and smile. Sarah sat down on the edge of the bed, her head in her hands. I never meant for it to happen this way. How did you mean for it to happen? Were you going to sit me down over breakfast one morning and explain that you'd fallen back in love with your high school boyfriend? Were you going to suggest we try an open marriage? Or were you just going to keep lying until you figured out a clean way to leave? I don't know, she whispered. I was confused. I am confused. No, you're not. You made your choice 3 months ago when you decided Derek was worth throwing away our marriage. You made your choice tonight when you let his mother call you her daughter-in-law. You made your choice when you lied to me about where you were. I headed for the door, then turned back. The only thing you're confused about is whether you can have it both ways. Whether you can keep me as backup while you test drive your upgrade. Well, here's some clarity for you. You can't. So that's it? 12 years of marriage and you're just walking away? The question hit me like a physical blow. I'm walking away? I'm the one walking away? I set down my bag and took a step toward her. Sarah, you walked away 3 months ago. You walked away the first time you met Derek for coffee and didn't tell me. You walked away the first time you kissed him, the first time you told him you missed him, the first time you let him believe you were available. We never. Don't you dare lie to me anymore. I saw you tonight. I saw the way you looked at him, the way he touched you, the way his parents welcomed you home. That wasn't the behavior of people having a casual friendship. She was crying again, but I felt nothing. No urge to comfort her, no desire to fix things, no hope that we could work it out. The woman I'd loved for 12 years had been replaced by a stranger who looked like her, but acted like someone I'd never met. I loved you, I said quietly. I loved you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. I would have done anything for you, been anything you needed me to be. But it was never enough, was it? I was never enough. That's not true. Isn't it? Then why Derek? Why now? What does he have that I don't? Sarah looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. For a moment, I thought she might fight for us. I thought she might say something that would make me want to stay and work through this. Instead, she said, "He understands me." 2 words that ended everything. "He understands you," I repeated, "and I don't." Jake, no, it's fine. You're right. I don't understand how someone can promise to love, honor, and cherish someone for better or worse, then throw it all away the minute something shinier comes along. I don't understand how someone can lie to their spouse's face while planning a future with someone else. I don't understand how someone can sit in another man's living room and let his parents talk about their husband like he's just some inconvenient obstacle. I picked up my bag again. So you're right. He understands you better than I do, and that tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. I made it to the front door before she called after me one last time. Jake, wait. What am I supposed to tell people? What am I supposed to say when they ask what happened? I turned around and looked at her standing in our hallway in her wrinkled blue dress, makeup smeared, hair disheveled, looking nothing like the woman I'd married. Tell them the truth, I said. Tell them you chose someone else. Tell them you decided 12 years wasn't long enough to figure out whether you loved your husband. Tell them you found something better. And what are you going to tell them? I opened the front door and stepped out into the cold night air. I'm going to tell them my wife died 3 months ago. I just didn't know it until tonight. I spent the next 3 days at the Riverside Motel, a rundown place on the outskirts of town that charged by the week and didn't ask questions. The room smelled like cigarettes and industrial disinfectant, but it was clean and quiet. And most importantly, it wasn't the house I'd shared with Sarah. Word travels fast in a small town. By Thursday morning, everyone knew that Jake Morrison's wife had left him for Derek Patterson. The story got embellished with each telling, as stories do. Some versions had me catching them in bed together. Others had Sarah cleaning out our bank accounts and disappearing in the middle of the night. The truth was somehow both more and less dramatic than the rumors. My phone rang constantly. Friends wanting to know if I was okay, coworkers offering to buy me drinks, my sister calling from Portland to tell me she'd never liked Sarah anyway. I ignored most of the calls, but there was one I couldn't avoid. "Jake Morrison, you son of a bitch, where the hell are you?" Mike Chen had been my best friend since high school. He was also Sarah's cousin, which had made things complicated over the years. Mike had introduced us at a 4th of July barbecue in 2011, and he'd been the best man at our wedding. If anyone had a right to be confused about whose side to take, it was Mike. "I'm at the Riverside," I said. "Room 237. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Mike showed up with a 6-pack of beer and a bag of burgers from Danny's Diner. He took one look at me, unshaven, wearing the same clothes I'd had on for 2 days, probably smelling like a construction worker who'd been living in a motel room, and shook his head. "You look like hell." "I feel like hell." He handed me a beer and sat down in the room's only chair while I perched on the edge of the bed. "So, want to tell me what really happened?" I told him everything. The text message, the phone call, the overheard conversation, the confrontation at Derek's house. Mike listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or grimacing at particularly painful details. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, 3 months. 3 months. "And she never said anything to you? Never gave you any indication she was unhappy?" I thought about it. Looking back, yeah. She'd been distant lately, less interested in everything. Our conversations, our plans, our marriage. But I thought it was just a rough patch. I thought we'd work through it like we always did. "Did you try talking to her about it?" A few times. She always said she was fine, just stressed about work or tired or whatever. I didn't push because I didn't want to be that husband, you know? The one who's always asking what's wrong and making everything about himself. Mike took a long drink of his beer. "Jake, I have to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me." "Okay. Did you see this coming at all? Any part of it?" I considered lying, but Mike deserved better than that. "Maybe. There were signs I ignored. She started caring about her appearance again, which sounds good, but felt different. She was always on her phone, always busy with something. She stopped talking about the future, our future. When I'd bring up vacation plans or home improvements or starting a family, she'd change the subject. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I was scared," I admitted. "I was scared that if I pushed too hard, I'd push her away." Turns out she was already gone. Mike leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Jake, I need to tell you something. Sarah called me yesterday." My stomach dropped. "What did she say?" "She wanted me to talk to you, to convince you to give her another chance." "And?" "And I told her to go to hell." I looked up at him in surprise. "Mike, she's your cousin." "Yeah, and you're my best friend. And what she did to you is unforgivable." His voice was getting louder, angrier. 12 years, Jake. 12 years you've been together. You put her through nursing school, you supported her when she wanted to quit working and find herself. You've been nothing but loyal and devoted, and she threw it all away for some rich boy who peaked in high school. His parents never thought I was good enough for her. His parents are snobs who think money equals worth, and Derek's a spoiled brat who's never had to work for anything in his life. Sarah knows that. She's known it since high school, but she also knows he can give her things you can't. Like what? Status, money, a big house in the right neighborhood, the kind of life she sees in magazines. Mike crushed his empty beer can in his fist. The thing is, she could have had all that with you if she'd been patient. Your electrical business is doing well. You're talking about expanding, hiring more guys. In 5 years, you could have given her everything Derek's offering now. But she didn't want to wait 5 years. No, she didn't. She wanted it now, and she was willing to betray you to get it. We sat in silence for a while, drinking beer and eating burgers that tasted like cardboard. Finally, Mike asked, "What are you going to do?" "Divorce her. Start over. Try to figure out what the hell comes next." "That's it? What do you mean?" "I mean, are you just going to let her walk away? Are you going to let Derek win?" I stared at him. What choice do I have? She made her decision? Jake, she humiliated you. She lied to you for months, made you look like a fool in front of the whole town, and now she's living it up with her rich boyfriend while you're hiding in a motel room feeling sorry for yourself. I'm not hiding. Yes, you are. You're letting them write the story. You're letting people think you weren't good enough to keep your wife happy. You're letting Derek and his family believe they won. They did win. They got what they wanted. Mike stood up and started pacing the small room. Did they? Because from where I'm sitting, Sarah just blew up her life for a guy who's going to get bored with her the minute something younger and prettier comes along. Derek's been engaged twice since high school. Did you know that? Both times to women who looked exactly like Sarah did when she was 22. I didn't know that, but it didn't surprise me. Derek had always been the type to trade up when he got restless. And Sarah, Mike continued, she just destroyed her reputation in this town. People are talking, Jake. They're saying she's a cheater and a liar. They're saying she used you and threw you away. They're saying Derek's just her meal ticket. Good. Is it? Because while they're saying all that about her, they're also saying you must have been a terrible husband if she was willing to risk everything to get away from you. That hit me like a punch to the gut. That's not true. I know it's not true. You know it's not true. But that's what people are saying. That's the story that's going around town. And as long as you're hiding in this motel room, that's the story that's going to stick. I set down my beer and looked at my best friend. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you stop acting like the victim and start acting like the man I know you are. I'm suggesting you remind this town who Jake Morrison really is. I'm suggesting you make Sarah and Derek regret what they did to you. How? Mike smiled, and there was something dangerous in his expression. Leave that to me. Mike's plan was simple and brutal. Make Sarah and Derek face the consequences of their choices in the most public way possible. It started small. Mike worked at the bank where both Sarah and Derek had accounts. He couldn't access their financial information, but he could see who came in and when, and he could certainly share observations with mutual friends, like the fact that Sarah had opened a new checking account the week before I caught them together, or that Derek had been making large cash withdrawals every Friday for the past 2 months, exactly enough to cover expensive dinners and hotel rooms. Just connecting dots, Mike said when I expressed concern about him getting in trouble, not sharing any confidential information, just mentioning interesting coincidences to people who might find them relevant. The rumors started spreading immediately. Sarah's nursing supervisor heard that she'd been planning her affair for months, carefully setting up her financial exit strategy while lying to her husband's face. Derek's real estate clients heard that he'd been using company funds to wine and dine his married girlfriend. His parents heard that their son had been pursuing a married woman while publicly claiming to be focused on his career. None of it was technically untrue, but the way Mike presented the information made Sarah and Derek look calculating and predatory rather than star-crossed lovers following their hearts. The real masterstroke came when Mike suggested I attend the monthly Chamber of Commerce meeting. Derek was scheduled to give a presentation about the local real estate market, and as a small business owner, I had every right to be there. You don't have to say anything, Mike assured me. Just show up. Look professional. Remind everyone that you're a respected member of this community who got screwed over by 2 people they trusted. I almost didn't go. The idea of facing Derek in public, of sitting there while he played the successful businessman, made me sick to my stomach. But Mike was right about one thing. I was tired of hiding. The meeting was held in the conference room at the Marriott, the nicest hotel in our small town. About 40 people attended, local business owners, city council members, the mayor, several prominent citizens. Derek was already there when I arrived, schmoozing with the bank president and the head of the tourism board. He saw me the moment I walked in. His face went white, then red, then settled into a forced smile as he excused himself from his conversation and approached me. Jake, I didn't expect to see you here. It's a public meeting, Derek. I'm a member of the business community. Of course. Listen, about the other night. What about it? Derek glanced around nervously. Several people were watching our interaction with obvious interest. I just want you to know that Sarah and I never meant for things to happen the way they did. We were hoping to handle everything more discreetly. Discreetly, I repeated. You mean you were hoping I wouldn't find out until after you'd convinced her to leave me? That's not... Derek. Mrs. Patterson appeared at her son's elbow, looking flustered and angry. What is he doing here? Hello, Mrs. Patterson, I said politely. How are you this evening? She looked at me like I was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. I'm fine, thank you. Though I must say I'm surprised to see you out and about so soon after recent events. Recent events? Your separation from Sarah, of course. I would have thought you'd want some time to process everything privately." The conversation around us had gotten quieter. People were definitely listening now. "There's nothing to process," I said clearly. "My wife had an affair with your son. She lied to me about it for 3 months. When I confronted them about it, neither of them denied it. Pretty straightforward situation." Mrs. Patterson's mouth fell open. Derek grabbed my arm, but I shook him off. "Jake, please," he said quietly. "This isn't the place. Isn't it? This is where you do business, isn't it? This is where you've built your reputation as a trustworthy real estate agent. These are the people you want to buy houses from you and recommend you to their friends." I looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. I just thought they should know what kind of man they're dealing with. The kind of man who pursues married women, the kind of man who helps wives lie to their husbands, the kind of man who lets his parents call another man's wife their daughter-in-law while that man is still married to her. The room was dead silent now. Derek's face had gone from red to purple. Mrs. Patterson looked like she was about to faint. "You have no right," she started. "I have every right," I cut her off. "I have the right to defend my reputation when people are spreading lies about why my marriage ended. I have the right to make sure everyone knows the truth about what happened." Mayor Williams stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Gentlemen, perhaps we could—" "It's fine, Mayor Williams," I said. "I've said what I came to say." I looked directly at Derek. "I hope she's worth it. I hope destroying a 12-year marriage and humiliating a man who never did anything to hurt you was worth whatever you think you're getting out of this." I turned to leave, then stopped and addressed the room one more time. For anyone who's wondering, I never saw it coming. Sarah and I had our problems like any married couple, but I thought we were working through them. I thought we were building a life together. I was wrong. She was building an exit strategy. I walked out of that room with my head held high, leaving behind a silence so complete you could have heard a pin drop. Mike was waiting for me in the parking lot, grinning like a wolf. "How'd it go?" "I think I just ended Derek's real estate career." "Good. What about Sarah?" "I thought about that. Sarah made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. But I was wrong about that. Sarah wasn't done making choices. And the next one would change everything." 3 days later, she showed up at my motel room door at 11 o'clock at night, drunk and crying and begging me to take her back. "I made a mistake," she sobbed, collapsing against me as soon as I opened the door. "I made a terrible mistake, and I want to come home." I helped her to the chair and got her a glass of water. She looked awful, hair unwashed, makeup smeared, wearing clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. "What happened, Sarah?" "Derek's parents happened. They want me to sign a prenup before we get engaged. They want me to agree that I won't get anything if we divorce. They want me to prove I'm not just after his money." I almost laughed. "And are you? After his money?" She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I don't know anymore. I don't know what I want. I just know I don't want to lose you." "You already lost me." "Jake, please. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible decisions. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through it. Sarah, stop. I love you. I know I didn't act like it, but I do love you. I always have." I sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt nothing but pity. If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent 3 months lying to me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have let Derek's parents talk about me like I was garbage. If you loved me, you would have come to me when you started having doubts about our marriage instead of running to another man. I was confused. No, you were selfish. You wanted to have it both ways. You wanted to keep me as backup while you explored your options. And now that your first choice isn't working out the way you planned, you want to come back to your safe option. Sarah started crying harder. "That's not true. Isn't it? Tell me honestly, Sarah. If Derek's parents had welcomed you with open arms, if they'd immediately started planning your wedding and talking about grandchildren, would you be here right now?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I thought so." I stood up and opened the door. "Go home, Sarah. Go back to Derek and sign his prenup and live the life you chose. But don't come back here looking for absolution or second chances. You used up all your chances 3 months ago. Jake, we're done, Sarah. We've been done since the night I found you at his house. The only difference is now you know it too." She left without another word, and I never saw her again, except in the lawyer's office when we signed the divorce papers 6 weeks later. She looked good that day, hair done, makeup perfect, wearing a new outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Derek was with her, holding her hand and whispering reassurances in her ear. They looked happy. They looked like a couple in love, starting their new life together. They looked like they'd won. But I knew better. I knew that Sarah would always wonder if she'd made the right choice. I knew that Derek would always wonder if she really loved him or just loved what he could give her. I knew that his parents would never let her forget that she was a second choice, a consolation prize, a woman who'd proven she couldn't be trusted to honor her commitments. And I knew that I was finally free. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in October. I signed the papers, shook my lawyer's hand, and walked out of the courthouse into a crisp fall day that felt like the first day of the rest of my life. Mike was waiting for me on the courthouse steps with a bottle of champagne and a job offer. My cousin's construction company in Denver is looking for an experienced electrician to run their residential division, he said. Good pay, good benefits, fresh start in a city where nobody knows your story. I looked back at the courthouse, then at the small town spread out below us. This place held 12 years of memories, most of them good until the last 3 months turned them all bitter. When do I start? 6 months later, I was living in an apartment in Denver with a view of the mountains, running a crew of 12 electricians, and dating a teacher named Lisa who thought my small-town stories were charming rather than embarrassing. I heard through Mike that Sarah and Derek had gotten engaged at Christmas, married in the spring, and bought a house in the most expensive neighborhood in town. I heard that Derek's real estate business had recovered from the scandal, and that Sarah had gone back to work as a nurse to help pay for their new lifestyle. I heard that they seemed happy. I hoped they were. I really did. Because I'd learned something important from the whole experience. Happiness isn't something you can steal from someone else. It's something you have to build for yourself with someone who wants to build it with you. And I'd finally found someone who did.